There are moments in life when desperation makes us do things we never imagined. For Marcus Thompson, standing outside the gleaming glass building of Sterling Industries at 7:30 on a Monday morning, clutching his daughter's hand while rehearsing words he knew sounded absolutely insane, this was one of those moments. The wedding invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, cream-colored and elegant, mocking him from his refrigerator door every single day. His ex-wife Rebecca was getting remarried, and somehow, despite everything, despite the lawyer fees he was still paying off and the custody arrangement that gave him Emma every other weekend, he had to go. Not for Rebecca. Never for Rebecca. But for his daughter, who had asked him with those wide brown eyes if he would be there to see Mommy marry Mr. Patterson, because it would mean the whole family could be together, just for one day. The problem was simple and utterly humiliating. Marcus couldn't face that wedding alone. He couldn't walk into that country club where Rebecca's new life gleamed with the success he'd never achieved, surrounded by people who had watched their marriage crumble, and stand there as the guy who hadn't been enough. The divorced dad. The mid-level accountant who worked too much and still couldn't make ends meet. The man who had been replaced by someone better. So here he stood, about to ask his boss, CEO Diane Mercer, a woman he'd spoken to exactly 4 times in his 3 years at the company, to be his fake date to his ex-wife's wedding. Emma tugged his hand. She was 6, bright as sunshine, wearing her favorite purple backpack that was nearly as big as she was. The company daycare didn't open until 8, but Marcus had an early meeting, and he'd hoped to catch Ms. Mercer before the day spiraled into chaos. He'd heard she came in early. He'd also heard she was brilliant, demanding, and had a reputation for seeing through any nonsense in approximately 3 seconds. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Emma whispered. "I know, sweetheart. Just give me 5 minutes, okay? Then we'll get breakfast." The elevator doors opened, and there she was. Diane Mercer, 42 years old according to the company website, looking exactly like someone who ran a multi-million-dollar tech company. Sharp gray suit, dark hair pulled back, heels that clicked with purpose against the marble floor. She was scrolling through her phone, coffee in hand, and didn't notice them until she was 3 feet away. "Ms. Mercer," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you. I'm Marcus Thompson from accounting, and I was wondering if I could ask you something. It'll just take a minute. Maybe less. Probably less." She looked up, and he watched her eyes move from him to Emma, her expression shifting from mild annoyance to something he couldn't quite read. "Mr. Thompson," she said, and he was surprised she knew his name. "Is everything all right? Is this about work?" "No. I mean, yes, everything's fine with work. This is personal. Very personal. Probably too personal, and I'm sorry, I just didn't know who else to ask." Her eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch. "I'm listening." The words tumbled out like water from a broken dam. He told her about the wedding, about Rebecca, about his daughter's hopeful request that he be there. He told her about every failed attempt to find a date, about his college roommate who'd moved to Seattle, about his neighbor who was 8 months pregnant, about the awkward coffee date with his dental hygienist that had ended with her blocking his number. And then, before he could stop himself, he asked, "Would you consider being my date? Just for appearances. Just so I don't have to walk in there alone and face all those people who remember what a failure I was at being a husband." The silence that followed felt like falling. "No," Diane said simply. "I'm sorry, but no." Marcus felt his face burning. "Right. Of course. I'm so sorry I asked. That was completely inappropriate. Please forget I said anything." He grabbed Emma's hand and turned toward the elevator, wishing the floor would open up and swallow him whole. Behind him, he heard Diane's heels clicking, growing distant. The meeting, his job, his dignity, all of it felt like it was dissolving. Saturday arrived like an executioner's deadline. Marcus stood in his bathroom, struggling with his tie, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This is Diane Mercer. What time is the wedding?" He nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what? The wedding? Your ex-wife's wedding. What time does it start?" 2 o'clock. "But Ms. Mercer, you said no. You don't have to." "I know what I said. I'll meet you there at 1:45. Text me the address." She hung up before he could respond. Marcus stood there, staring at his reflection, wondering if he'd imagined the entire conversation. But the text came through with the address he'd sent, and a simple reply, "See you then." The Riverside Country Club was exactly as awful as he'd imagined. White columns, manicured lawns, women in expensive dresses air-kissing while men in suits discussed golf handicaps. Marcus stood by his car, adjusted his tie for the 14th time, and checked his watch. 1:43. A sleek black Tesla pulled into the space beside him, and Diane stepped out. But this wasn't the CEO from Monday morning. She wore a soft blue dress that made her look approachable, almost kind. Her hair was down, and she was smiling. "Ready?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" The question escaped before he could stop it. She paused, her hand on her purse. "Monday morning, when you asked me, I saw your daughter. I saw how scared you were. And I remembered something I'd forgotten." She looked past him toward the country club. 15 years ago, I was supposed to get married. Big wedding, 300 guests, the works. He called it off 2 weeks before, and I had to face everyone alone at the venue cancellation meeting. My assistant at the time, a woman named Gloria who barely knew me, offered to come with me. She didn't have to. It didn't benefit her in any way. But she sat next to me for 2 hours while I signed papers and answered questions, and she never made me feel pathetic for needing her there. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just don't leave me alone with the boring guests." They walked in together, and Marcus felt the stares immediately. He saw Rebecca across the room, beautiful in her wedding dress, and watched her expression change from surprise to something complicated when she saw Diane beside him. But it didn't matter. For the first time in 3 weeks, the knot in his stomach loosened. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma served as flower girl, beaming with pride. Marcus sat in the third row with Diane, and when the officiant asked if anyone objected, she leaned over and whispered, "Don't even think about it," making him laugh for the first time all day. At the reception, something unexpected happened. Diane didn't just pretend to be his date. She talked to Emma about her favorite books. She asked Marcus about his work, really asked, in a way that made him realize she'd probably never known what he actually did at the company. She was funny and warm, and when Rebecca's new husband's brother made a passive-aggressive comment about starter marriages, Diane shut him down with such elegant precision that Marcus wanted to applaud. During the father-daughter dance, Marcus held Emma while she stood on his shoes, the way they always did. When the song ended, he looked over to see Diane wiping her eyes. "You okay?" he asked when he returned to their table. "I don't have kids," she said quietly. "I built a company instead. Some days I wonder if I made the right choice." "You can still have both," Marcus said. "It's not too late." She smiled, but it was sad. "Maybe." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Rebecca approached their table. Marcus tensed, but his ex-wife's expression was softer than he expected. "Thank you for coming," she said. Then, looking at Diane, "and thank you for making him smile. I forgot what that looked like." After she walked away, Marcus turned to Diane. "I should probably tell you something. I might be falling in love with you a little bit." She laughed, really laughed. "That's the champagne talking. Maybe. But maybe not." They left together, Emma asleep on Marcus's shoulder. In the parking lot, under the stars, Diane stopped. "I had a good time today," she said. "That's not something I say often. Would you want to do it again? Without the wedding, without the pretending. Just dinner, maybe." She considered this, her head tilted slightly. "Pick me up Friday at 7. And Marcus, bring Emma. I'd like to get to know her better." As he drove home, Emma sleeping peacefully in the backseat, Marcus thought about the strange twists of fate that bring people together. About how asking for help, even when it feels impossible, can open doors you never knew existed. About how sometimes the person who saves you is someone you barely know, someone who has no obligation to care but chooses kindness anyway. Monday morning, he dropped Emma at daycare and headed to his desk. There was an email waiting from Our. His stomach dropped, convinced he was about to be fired for the most inappropriate request in corporate history. Instead, it was a notification. He'd been promoted to senior accountant, effective immediately, with a 20% raise. At the bottom, a note from Diane. "This was decided 3 weeks ago, before you asked me to the wedding. You earned this on your own merit. But now we'll be working more closely together. Try not to make it weird. See you Friday." Marcus sat back in his chair and laughed until tears ran down his face. Sometimes, he thought, the universe has a strange way of working things out. Sometimes asking for help doesn't make you weak. Sometimes saying yes to something uncomfortable leads somewhere beautiful. And sometimes, the person who seems completely unreachable is exactly who you need to reach for. That Friday, he picked up Diane at 7 sharp. Emma wore her favorite purple dress and brought a book to show her. They went to a small Italian restaurant where the pasta was homemade and the owner knew everyone by name. They talked about everything and nothing, and when Emma fell asleep against Diane's shoulder after dinner, something settled into place. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real people choosing to show up for each other, choosing kindness over convenience, choosing to believe that human connection matters more than pride or fear or the walls we build to protect ourselves. 6 months later, Marcus would propose in that same parking lot where they'd said goodbye after the wedding. A year after that, Emma would be their flower girl for real, wearing that same purple dress she'd worn to their first dinner. And Diane would finally understand that building a life with someone isn't about choosing between success and love, but about finding someone who believes you deserve both. But that night, driving home with both of them asleep beside him, Marcus simply felt grateful. Grateful for the courage to ask. Grateful for a woman who'd said no, then changed her mind. Grateful for the reminder that we're all just people trying our best, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we can't do it alone.